Hello everyone, welcome to the next lesson of our Spring Security course. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about the forget password functionality, and I'm very sure that most of you already know how it works. Just to give you some more idea, there are two variations of the forget password functionality. One is the basic forget password workflow, which you might have seen on most of the popular sites. For example, if you go to Amazon, you go to Walmart, you go to Flipkart, all those kind of sites, right? You you click on a link, you fill your email, you get a link, and then you reset your password. But probably for most more secure application, let's like a banking application, or where there is a some sensitive informations are involved, there might be one additional or two additional step on top of that. Let's say there might be a set of series of questions related to the security. Probably you must have filled during your registration, or there might be two-factor authentication where you got an SMS on your register number, and you cannot fill that number. You got that token, you fill that token, you fill other details, and then you get a forget password link, right? I'm not going to talk about the second workflow because that's a little advanced, and I'm going to talk about that into our advanced sections. But this is going to talk about the basic process, and I think for 90% of the applications out there, or probably if something which you are building, that might fall into the first scenario where it's very standard workflow into the forget password. All right. So just to give you an idea, these are kind of a high level of steps. Okay. So let's jump into the coding part right away, because that's where the entire things resides. Okay. All right. So the first thing what we need is the controller, and this controller is going to do three steps. Okay, I have added some skeleton code here, and it's not doing anything. Okay, we will start filling out while we keep on adding the functionality, the password functionality on top of that, right? So this is the first method in our controller, and this method is going to handle your first request. Let's say you come to the site and you say, hey, I forgot my password. You click on that forget password link, it open up a page, and then you fill out your email ID, right? So once you click on send me reset my password, this is the first controller, or this is the method which is going to handle their incoming request. All right, and this method is going to do multiple things. So there will be a certain set of services which is going to work together, but this method will work as the entry point. So this method will collect that email address, will verify your details. If it finds those details, it basically create a secure token for you, send out the secure email including that secure token, and then give you a message. So that's the first thing this method is going to do. And again, for the forget password functionality, it's a very similar to what you have onto the registration process, where we send out an email to verify your account, right? Your forget password functionality will contain a token when we send that forget password email, and that token contains a certain information. For example, it contains information about your user account, what was the email ID that has been used, and it also contains a certain information. On top of that, that token in itself will have a certain validity period, right? You can make it a configurable. If you don't know, watch my previous lesson on how to create a kind of a double step registration process. It talks about all those processes. All right. Okay, now the second step is this method. There's a get, right? If you see, it's a get mapping. So this method is when we send out the link in the email, there will be a certain URL, right? And that URL has to be handled at our end, right? So once a customer clicks on that link, this is the controller which will be triggered. And then if you see, we are basically expecting a token as part of the request parameter, and then certain other attributes. We will talk about it, right? So that's the second method in our code. I'm making it as a required false, and the reason is, though the token is required. So once you click on that link should contain a token, because that's how we will be able to verify all the information. I'm making it as a false rather than making it as a true. And the reason is I want to give a customized message to the end user, right? I want to tell them, hey, there might, because probably you might done something wrong while copying that link or while clicking on that link, right? So that's the reason I'm setting it as a false. Now, the third step, the third method is a post variation of our second method. So once you click on that link on your email ID, it basically, if everything looks good, it will give you an form. Like our application is going to give you a form where you fill your new password and then click on reset password button, and it basically reset the password and then you log into the system. So once you fill your password, this is the third controller where your reset password with your new password data will be submitted or will be handled, and this is going to call our internal service. All right. Now let's open our user service. This is a new service which we have created, and this is the service which is going to handle all the account related, customer account related informations. Okay, so I have added two methods here. One is the forgot password method, and this method is nothing but once you provide your email ID, this method will perform multiple things. First, it will try to get the user information or the user entity based upon that email ID. If it finds that ID, it is going to send out the email. It's basically going to generate the secure token. It creates an email for you, append that secure token into that email link and send out the email. Okay, so I have divided that method in this method into two parts. One where this will be triggered from the controller, and then it basically send out the email. Okay, now the first thing what I'm going to do is from the user service, okay, I'm going to call user by username, which is our email ID. Okay, and this user is nothing but our user entity. Let's call it as a user. Okay, and then I'm going to pass this user to our send reset password email. All right. So there is one interesting thing. We are throwing out the unknown identifier exception because there is a possibility you provided an email and that email does not exist into the system. So we are throwing at unknown identifier exception, and I will be talking about that in more detail. How what are the recommended way to handle that during the forgot password functionality. All right. Now this is done. The next step what we are going to do is we will be kind of doing a multiple things. We are going to generate a secure token, going to save into our database. Then we are going to send out an email containing that secure token what we have generated, because that's how you will be verifying yourself before you can do a forgot password. So this is my code for the send password email, right? A reset password email. So I'm creating a secure token, assigning a user to that secure token, saving it, and then I am sending out an email. Again, I'm not going to discuss about the email functionality because I have already talked about that in our registration process, and this is entirely similar to what we have discussed. The entire logic and the workflow remains same. The only difference is the URL will be different because in this case we are going to send out an URL with a reset password link. Okay, now that is done. So next, now the other part which is remaining is creating a form onto the front end, which will basically allow you to fill in your email while you click on I forgot my password link. Okay. All right. So this is my forgot password link. All right. And this form is very kind of it's not a very complex form. You see, I am mapping this to password request, which is of a type post, what we have described here, right? So if once I submit this form, it will be handled by this controller. Okay. Now this contains only one thing, which is an email, because that's how we are going to identify the customer and going to send out the email. Okay. Okay. So let's go back to our forget password controller, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call the forget password functionality, and then I'm going to say get email thing. Okay, we'll talk about this error, but first I want to talk about this reset password data. So if you see, I have combined both the steps and I'm creating only one bean where in the first request we will only be getting an email, and in the second one we are going to get all these three fields. But if you want to separate those out, feel free to do that. There is nothing right or wrong into that approach. Okay. All right. Okay. So now I'm getting a error here, right, or an exception. The reason is because there is an exception which is thrown by the system and we need to handle it. No, we have a two ways to handle that one, right? We can add it into the method signature, or we can do a try and catch. We will be doing a try and catch, and the reason for that one is let's say I'm saying log the error. Okay, now the reason why I want to do that is because there are two possibilities, right? Either you are a genuine customer having a valid email, or you are kind of playing around with the system, right? You are playing around with the different email IDs or maybe email ID of someone else, and you're trying to see whether that account exists into the system or not. And as a best practice, you should never tell the end user that we have found your account and we have sent you an email, or we don't found your account and we are not able to send the email, right? So in any case, we are going to send a generic message to the customer saying, hey, if we find your account, then we will send out you an email. And the reason for that one is, from the front end perspective, it doesn't matter whether we found your account or not, because if it's a valid account, you will get an email to your account. Okay. Did some other things. You see, I have added this message. It's a generic message. Okay. And if I open my message or property, I have this message, right? If the email address is matched, then we will send you an email. Okay. And the reason why I'm using a message source is because I want to handle the localization. Let's say you have a multi site application or a multilingual application, you want to handle the localized messages. You can always create a different kind of resources. For example, one for English, one for German, French, Italian, any other language, right? And then you have to pass the locale. So that's basically Spring already make sure that the locale is being set correctly based upon the browser and other details. Okay. All right. So that is done. So our first part is done. Now the second part is once you receive an application, your reset password email, right? You click on that link, then this method should be able to handle that request. So this method is going to do a few things. Let's talk about those one. All right. So our method is doing few things. First thing is, if token does not exist, that means customer somehow did some mistake or the token is missing into the URL, we want to give a friendly message to the customer. So that's what we did into the first part. In the second part, what we did is we created this instance of this object, and then if there is a token, right, into the request parameter, we set that token here, right, into the object, and then we are setting that into the model as a forgot password one. And I will walk you through why we want to do that, and ultimately we are returning the view to the change password. So this page is where you will be providing your new password. Okay, so let's see what we have into the change password. So let's see what all we have into the change password. So the first thing is we have a change password. It's mapped to this URL and of a type post, and it is binding to that forget password object, right? So in short, it is binding to, once you click onto the submit button, this controller method will be handling that incoming request, and then it is bound to this forget password object, right? And in that one we are setting the token. Okay. Apart from that, we are basically accepting only two fields. One is the password and the repeat password. those will be your new password, right? And then I am setting that token as a hidden field, and the reason is because based upon this token we will first do a few verification, and only then we will use your new password and use that as a, or set that as a new password. All right, so this thing is done. Now let's see, once you fill all the details into change password, let's say this form is presented to you, you filled your new password, and then you click on this change password link, right? The data will be submitted to this method, controller methods. Okay, so let's see what all we will be doing here. So I'm doing a few things. First thing first, I'm using our customer account service and calling the update password. But if you see in the update password, I don't have anything here. So we will talk about that, what should go here. And then let's say if there is an invalid token exception or there is an unknown identifier exception, we want to give a message to the customer, and then we will basically show the same change password form but with a error message, right? And if everything went well, we want to show a different message to the customer, but again we want to keep the customer onto the same change password page. Okay, now the reason, there can be two things, right? First, let's take an example, is someone sending out a invalid token, or someone is generating their own token, just trying to play around with the system, correct? So in that case, token will not be valid, we will get an exception. Or second scenario is, let's say you set a token expiry time to 4 hours and someone clicked that email link after 8 hours. Again, in that case, there should be it should throw an exception, right? And the other option is, let's say the token is valid, but there seems to be some issue while we are trying to fetch a customer information related to the token. Let's say by the time someone clicks onto the forget password link, and when they click on the link, between that your account has been deactivated, right? Or it has been kind of marked as a suspicious account or something like that, right? So in that case, we don't want anyone to kind of go ahead and reset the password. So we still want to give you an error message. Okay, so now let's go here and start filling some details into our account. All right, so we are doing a couple of things here. First thing, we are getting a token, right? And let's say if the token is empty, it's a null, or it's expired, or it's not matching with what we have got so far, is that then we are going to throw a invalid token exception. If that is okay, we got that token, right? We just want to make sure that there is a valid user based upon that token information. Again, if there is an issue with the customer, we want to throw an exception. Okay, the next thing is, we don't want to store the used token, right? So we will remove that token, and ultimately using our password encoder and the new password that has been provided by the customer, we going to set a new password and that save the information. Okay, if you want to be more proactive, what you can do is, after this process, you can always send out a notification email to the customer telling them that, hey, your account has been updated or a new password has been updated, right? It's kind of you sending some more information to make sure that if someone else is doing it, there is still a chance for the original account holder to see that information. Okay, now the last part before we get into the workflow or seeing the demo, this is I'm embedding the forget password functionality into the login screen, right? So I have this, where is my forget password? Yeah, this is my forget password link, right? And I am basically, if you see, I'm including this, I'm using a thymeleaf, I'm including a forget password model. And once you click on that link, it will going to open a forget password model. All right, so that's give you an idea what are the different changes, what kind of a different services you need to create in order to have the forget password functionality in your application. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start my application, and then we will see an end-to-end workflow how the entire forget password thing works. Application got started. Let's do one thing. Let's fill the details and click on reset password link. Okay, click on reset password link. All right, so we got this message, right? And now let's check our email account to see if we received the forget password email or not. Okay, so we got that email with the button to click, and then also we have a link. So I'm going to copy this link, and then you can always work on to the styling and other things on an email, right? Okay, let's use this link. We got this reset password page, right? So I'm going to fill the password 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Okay, let's click on change password link. So you see everything works fine. It says your password has been updated. Okay, so now what we can do is we will try to log into the system. Let's go back to our login screen and then fill the login details. Let's click on sign in, and voila, we got signed in, right? So that's give you an idea how the this overall forget password link or the processing works. And the other thing which you can try out is because this video is getting longer, is that try to use the same URL, right? Once you verify your account, you basically click on that link, you provided a new password. If you again use that link it from your email, it will give you an error saying, hey, this token is not valid, or it's an invalid token, and all those things, right? So you have to also make sure that once the token has been used, once the account has been set up, the password has been reset, it should not allow you to reset that password again with the same token. All right, so that's I hope that that will help you to create a forget password functionality for your application. If you like my tutorials, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching this video.